Hi there. Here's another episode of Ask the Expert Thursdays on Contingent Workforce Strategies LinkedIn group. And I am so excited about the topic today and our guest. This is my first international guest on the show, coming live from Copenhagen, Denmark. Morten Petersen from Worksum, and wanted to talk on the topic of Technologist's approach to building contingent workforce solutions. And it's a really interesting time in the contingent workforce space. There's been a lot of investment in the technology community looking at building out platforms, be it online staffing platforms, FMSs, the next gen VMSs, etc., compliance tools, you name it. And there's this convergence happening where staffing is starting to wake up and invest in technology and putting on kind of that technology approach to it, where you've got technology really advancing rapidly, and also in some cases putting manual processes behind the curtain. This is not the case with my next guest. He's a former Googler that has raised a bunch of money in the market and has built a very cool tool, and really comes from into the contingent space from a technology first and a technology background. So Morten, it's amazing to have you on the show to talk about this, the approach that a technologist takes in building out contingent workforce solutions. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel very honored and privileged to be the first international guest on this show, Jeff. What an honor.
It's fantastic. And it's been so much fun getting to know you. We've had such great conversations on the market, your approach to building solutions for the market. And I thought, it's a great time to have you on the show because it's such a relevant topic. So, with further ado, one of the things that is always interesting to me, and from a leadership perspective, I often talk to CEOs and different companies and even program managers and say the why, right? What's the why for doing what you're doing? And so what did you see, and why are you doing what you're doing and building out technology to assist companies in managing contingent and contract workers better?
That's a really good question. And the thing is that I don't really have a background in this industry. So my interest in this space basically got peaked from my time at Google. I spent 5 years with Google from 12 until 17. And this was really sort of the golden age of technology. A lot of stuff happened in that period. So this was the rise of basically all the platforms that we know, all the way from Uber to Instagram and so forth, all arised in that period. And could sort of see how digitization was transforming industries rapidly. But I was a hiring manager at Google as well, and hired a bunch of people, both full-time employees and contractors, because at that time 50% of the workforce in Google was contractors. And really the reason for us diving into this was that the process of hiring contractors inside of Google, and sorry for saying this, but that was really a painful process. And it annoyed me so much on a personal level because I'm a firm believer in flexibility and firmly believe that the world is heading in that direction, and sort of seeing the current state of affairs was just too much for me to handle. So we had to jump ship and find a better way. That's been the sort of starting point for this.
Amazing. Yeah. And as an entrepreneur as well, there is always those personal situations that kind of drive you to find a better way. And then you do your market research and you say, hey, listen, this is an interesting business that, has a large market and hasn't really advanced in for the most part for 10, 15, 20 years. I know within the industry we've advanced in certain things, but as a user you weren't seeing those advantages and advancements, right?
Well, absolutely. And I don't even have sort of all the history in my mind from this industry because I only sort of recently started to follow it, but I could just see that the problem was still very real, right? And there was opportunity to make technology do more of the heavy lifts in the workflow. And that's really where we're sort of starting from, to remove the friction that sits in this category, at least sat in that category still. Because maybe I'm just naive, but I actually think that there should be no friction in the world. Wouldn't that be great if there's just everything was just super easy? Because technology did all the heavy lifting, and this has been the starting point for us and how we also go about solving the problem today. And there was certainly a lot of friction for me as a hiring manager. So it's just figuring out where do you think that technology can impact the most and get what is complicated today and trivial and boring, to be honest, and just make that go away, right? We should, and sort of the end goal for us is really to make working with the contingent workforce and hiring people as easy as hailing an Uber, you could say. So a lot of stuff have to sort of go on in the back end of a system like that for that to actually work. But from the user point of view, it shouldn't be more complicated. And I'm not saying we're there yet, but we're trying at least.
Yeah, and really, when you think about it, there are revolutionary applications that now are so ingrained in our mindset as a society, and things like Instagram, things like Uber, etc., that you're so used to on demand and it just working seamlessly and just happening. Like, that is the ultimate goal in a lot of cases, to help customers achieve what they know is the ultimate convenience in on-demand kind of solutions, right?
Exactly. So as a consumer in our daily life, it takes these things for granted, right? We expect to just be able to swipe on our app and it's all done and taken care of, and stuff that actually feels magical if you sort of go 20 years back. And I think this is sort of also the direction we should be heading towards from a more complex B2B point of view, as the one we're addressing here.
Yeah. And so, I'm not one for plugging sort of certain brands, but you took an approach to looking at the end-to-end process as well, versus specifically saying this is the one problem that we're going to solve in the whole ecosystem. Why was that? And what are you looking to achieve by trying to solve all of the steps and all the friction in a bigger process versus just solving friction points in one or two of the pieces?
Yeah, so I guess being new to this industry, there's been a steep learning curve, and especially sort of in recent years, and sort of trying to understand how we even talk about this industry and all the acronyms and how it's all connected, and what's the relationship with the MSP and the VMS and the staffing agencies and so forth. So there's a lot to understand as a newcomer in this industry, but I think what is really important in any industry, really, when you're trying to innovate, is to not focus so much on the industry and how that has constructed itself throughout many years, but focus on sort of the core problem. What is really the core problem that you're trying to solve for? And it's usually, in this case, just a problem for maybe two persons that want to connect, right? And how can you sort of make that as seamless as possible? And so sort of deconstruct that problem, figure out what are the big friction points, and then solve that. And this goes for the contingent workforce space, but for any other space, really. Where if you sort of start thinking too much about what is the industry standards, how does this all connect, where should we fit in, you sort of come at the problem from, at least in our point of view, the wrong angle, and you're not solving the real problem. You're trying to sort of fix or repair maybe something that is partially broken.
Yeah.
If that makes
sense.
sense.
It's a Band-Aid approach versus taking a step back and saying, hey, I'm building a new product. I've got a blank page. I've got a foundation to build on. I'm don't need to put a Band-Aid on an existing solution and just kind of build from there. And I'm not doing a renovation. I'm building new. So let's take a step back and understand all of the issues and build it, ideally correctly the first time, right? And learn from what the incumbents have built in the past, right?
Exactly. And now I guess we and many other innovators will then eventually have to figure out how to then fit into the wider ecosystem. So you can't ignore that, and you shouldn't ignore that. But I'm just saying that you need to focus on the core problem first and then on the ecosystem. I think that's the right way to go about solving problems.
I 100% agree. I think it's one of those things that the industry has built on itself and continued to build on itself in kind of an evolution. And so I almost use that building a house. You've renovated and renovated and renovated. You could almost also say it's almost like government. Government has a legislation, and then the next government comes in and they want to add or enhance to it. And then, you've taken I help someone find a job, and the job find the worker, and all the steps in between. And we've built lots of steps in between. Whereas you're coming to say, let's just keep it clean between the 2 points and then build in the solution in between to make that happen as quickly and frictionlessly as possible, right?
Yeah, because eventually that gives you the best experience. And I think that's just a thing to remember, that there is actually real people having real experiences with this. It's not something that you can just, it's not just a procurement project. It's something that affects real people every day. So I think it's very important to think about how to make that as pleasant as possible. And I'm not saying we're getting it all right, definitely not, but I'm just talking about how we sort of think about the problem here.
Yeah. So, in terms of trends, I've talked a lot about technology trends and platform trends, of which you're part of that trend coming into the marketplace. But I've also talked about automation and AI. And I know we've been talking a few times about AI in the market. And I'd love to get your take on some of the things that you're seeing and experimenting with from a technology perspective that, programs should be more aware of when they're looking to build out their solutions and work with their partners on solutions, what they should be thinking about as technology solving certain problems, especially that would be manual, time-consuming processes in the past that now can be automated through AI. And we always hear about Chat GPT.
Yeah, so I feel so we're in for a treat. The next couple of years will be very exciting with all the sort of new things that are going on with AI and ChatGPT and all of that. But even just sort of, if you even don't take that into account, there's so many opportunities for us to automate processes, and also some of the very complex processes that we have usually sort of relied on human beings to take care of. Compliance is a big topic of this industry for good reasons. And I really think that tech has the ability to mitigate risk and deal with compliance, theoretically at least, much more efficient than any human being. Because when you sort of dive into the realm of laws in this area, it's endless, right? And being able to sort of have the machines doing the heavy lifting for consistency in how you deal with these matters, I think is a massive opportunity for the industry, and something that pulls out a lot of resources today, both in process, but also in actual work and reading through contracts and so forth. So there's loads of opportunities in that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've dabbled in it, and it's been from, helping write better job descriptions to reading resumes and parsing out skills and matching candidates faster, better, to the compliance 100%. And then if you think about staffing agencies trying to reconcile, their payroll and invoicing on a weekly, monthly basis, those are all manual processes that should be automated, and technology tends to do things faster and in a lot of cases more accurate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not a software engineer myself, so we have wonderful people doing that inside of Worksome. So I've actually never written any code myself, but I have been playing around with ChatGPT just to see what it can do. And just for the kicks of it, I actually had it the other day to not only sort of tell me about the legislation on how to sort of determine whether a worker is exempt or non-exempt, but also to put together the test and write that in an HTML format with the CSS that goes with that. So you can actually directly post this test on a website to check whether or not a worker is exempt or non-exempt. And it took like 3 minutes for me to do. And I'm non-technical. So that's pretty impressive what we can expect to see from this in the future.
Well, I'm excited to see what the future holds, but I'm very thankful for you to be on Ask the Expert. And it's been a fascinating discussion, getting into the mind of a technologist and your approach to building out solutions for the contingent workforce. So Morten, I can't thank you enough for coming on. And I have a feeling that we'll also have more discussions around automation and things you're doing in AI.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It was a pleasure.